The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Improving Performance, Positivity, and Health During Chaos and Critical Stress. I am Anne-Marie Salvatelli, AWCI's Director of Education. Before we start, a few housekeeping items. Should you have a question at any time during today's broadcast, please submit it using the question box in your GoToWebinar dashboard. We'll have a Q&A at the end of our presentation, and we'll make every attempt to get all of your questions answered. Today's webinar is being recorded. All attendees will receive an email with a link to the recording and a copy of the handouts. Now I would like to introduce our presenter, Chad Pearson. Chad is with Plexxis Software Incorporated and brings a unique perspective to the industry, mixing 12 years in construction technology with 30 plus years competing in combat sports, coaching world-ranked fighters, and a career in law enforcement where he focused on emergency response and criminal investigations. Welcome, Chad. And with that, let's turn it over to you and get this presentation started. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, Emery. Welcome, everybody. Man, we are just gonna jump right into things with a prank. It's gonna set this presentation up in the right direction. Let me just bring up this video. Give me 1 second here. Now, I call this video the husband of the year. And when it starts, just pay attention to his finger. And then after this video, we're gonna jump right into the introduction. Okay, we're gonna do a little pivot here. For some reason in the test, it was working great, but it's funny that this isn't working because this is kind of what this presentation is about. Dynamic, volatile, uncertain scenarios. So let's skip that and jump right into the presentation. My name is Chad Pearson, everyone, as Anne-Marie mentioned, and this is Improving Performance, Positivity, Physical and Mental Health During Chaos and Critical Stress. And the comment or the part on mental health is critical here because where the world is going, we're going in a direction where mental health is, we believe, is going to become just an epidemic. And it impacts our performance both in work life and home life, all areas in life. And there's two things that we could do. We can train our brains to perform under pressure, or we can introduce tactics into our personal and professional lives that will help us handle stress, not only in a better way, but in a way that actually makes us love what we're doing. So on that note, the first thing that we need to do is really understand stress. And this part's really easy. It's defined as, physical, mental, or emotional strain or pressure. Real simple. But what this basically means is that anything that needs action creates stress. And that's really important because if you want to eliminate stress in your life, you would literally have to do nothing and not even think. And as far as I know, the only place that you can do that is Congress, and none of us are in Congress. So stress is just a fact of life, and it can be an amazing part of our lives if we manage it properly and prepare for the stress and repair afterwards. Now, what you're seeing right in front of you is a graphic that represents the path that most of us are on. And it's because the brain was designed in an ancient world, right? Like if you think back of when we were cavemen, the brain was designed to protect us from 4 things: murder, sexual assault, starvation, and being hunted. We're going to be talking about the stress response system. And I really want you to keep in mind that that stress response was designed around those 4 things. But the problem is in our modern world, we worry about things like our mortgage, being late for work. You know, was my food order correct? Is there peanuts in this? You know, we've become so intelligent that even thinking about hypothetical scenarios that will never ever happen will engage our stress response, the same stress response that was designed to protect us from those 4 threats to life. And in our modern world, we are experiencing or engaging that stress response literally every hour, hundreds of times a day. Back when we were cavemen, the stress response would be engaged about 2 to 3 times a day, but now we're experiencing 100 times a day. So if you use a roller coaster analogy, it was meant to be on a 3-minute roller coaster, but now we're riding a roller coaster for about 10 hours a day, and it's wreaking havoc on our body. So the good news is, if we train our brain to perform under pressure, the pressures of the modern world, we can not only improve performance, positivity, and physical and mental health, but we can reverse the damage that has already been done. Now, one thing I want to mention here is this is just an introduction to a 20-episode series that we are releasing, it's a zero-cost series. We will be giving it to all members. It's going to be coming out, I believe, next March. And what you're going to see today is just an introduction to it. We're going to cover a little bit of the foundation, and then the 20 episodes that are going to follow are going to give you tactics that will improve performance, positivity, physical, mental health, not only in your work life, but in your personal lives as well. So it really is about making you, a better friend, a better parent, a better coworker, just a better person, really becoming your best overall in the best possible way. And this acronym is really at the core of it. And it's funny because it just happened when the bandwidth shut down the first video. And I'm hoping it doesn't really shut down the rest of the videos because they're so good and they're critical to this presentation. If they do, if the bandwidth still is poor and these videos don't work, I am going to provide those videos in the package that you guys will get afterwards. So don't worry about that. You'll see the videos afterwards. But for now, what's important is this term, VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It was a term that was born in the military to characterize challenging environments that had a high chance of death, bodily harm, or mental trauma. And as I say the acronym out loud, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, you're probably thinking that it describes every day for you, and I would say that you are correct. This term is no longer limited to the military, law enforcement, first responders, or fighters. We now live in a VUCA environment, and the world's response to COVID has made that even more true. And what's important about VUCA environments is that under pressure, humans do not rise to expectations, they fall to the level of their training. Humans always underperform under pressure. It's, this isn't the movies. You don't magically get the skills that you need when you're under pressure and you are pursuing a desired outcome or expectation. And the fact that we all now live in a VUCA world, training your brain to perform under pressure is becoming more critical. And here is the opportunity. The next 5 years, we are certain that they will be defined by struggle. All of us are going to be under increasing pressure. Where the opportunity is that those who excel in struggle and perform well under pressure are really going to be the ones who are setting the new standards for the next 20 years. And it comes down to how the body reacts under pressure. And what we're going to dig into today is what we call it's called the brain-body relationship. And this is when within 0.5 seconds of the brain detecting pressure, you will experience physiological reactions, even cognitive decline. And this is why people underperform under pressure. And it involves a whole network of systems in the body, but to keep things simple for today, we're only going to focus on two things, the limbic system and the cortex. So the limbic system, just think about it as the caveman brain. It's the emotional part of your brain. The cortex, your thinking modern brain. Now, when it comes to the limbic system, you know, most people have heard of the fight or flight response, but there's also the freeze and the tend and befriend. But what's really important is that this is the part of the brain that was that kept us alive as cavemen, and it only matures to the age of a toddler, like 4 or 5 years old. So for those of you who are married and have gotten into arguments with your spouse, and your spouse is accusing you of acting like a child, they're not wrong. I don't know if that happens to you. It happens to me all the time. So it's because of the stress response. You experience what's called limbic transfer, and you grossly underperform. And if you take yourself back to one of those experiences, what probably happened next was you separated yourselves, things calmed down, now functioning in your cortex, and you probably thought of all the amazing things you could have said. That's because you transferred back to your cortex and you had full access to your physical and cognitive skills. So we could spend a whole day on the systems within the body and the brain, but like I said, we're just going to focus on these two. And I noted a whole bunch of symptoms and things that the cortex is responsible for. Don't read all these. I just put it in here in the presentation so you could have it for later. I'm a big fan of Jeff Sample's Show Me, Don't Tell Me. So we're gonna try to look at some of these with some videos right now. So let's give this another shot. If it doesn't work, don't worry, we're gonna cover it old school. So let's see if we can get this going. Okay, so when you suffer limbic transfer, you lose your fine motor skills, the things that, you know, using your fingers to pick up a document. So you see that, you know, that entertaining quasi kind of fight because their brain was limiting their physical ability. Next one. This one might be a little bit more relatable to everybody. I want you to take a look at the mother's left hand at the end of the video. Okay. So that's another sign of limbic transfer. You know, blood is increasing, the heart rate is increasing, trying to get more blood to the large muscles. The body is preparing to fight or flee from a physical threat. And like I said, in our modern world, these are the things that we are dealing with. This one, I've taken the audio out of this one. This one's a famous Marco Rubio awkward reaching for water. And probably almost everybody has experienced this. So I'm gonna, give me 1 second here. I'll put this baby on and take a look at, you know, if you take a look at Marco here, you could see that he's trying to get more saliva in his mouth and he just can't. So he does that awkward reach for water. This happens all the time with people, and it's because when you experience limbic transfer, your body wants to reserve all energy for the important muscles and systems it needs to survive the threat. So it shuts down the digestive system. And this is really important because if you're working throughout the day and you're stressed out, but you're hungry and you keep on eating, your digestive system is not ready for that food. And that's where people start to get spare tires around their midsections. Your body is not prepared to digest food properly. So what you need to do, or what you should do to maintain a higher level of health, is when you're stressed and you get hungry, you just gotta chill and you gotta wait for your salivary glands to be operational again. If you do that, you'll change so much about your body's ability to maintain strong nutrition from the food that you're eating. If you don't do that, you're just going to be ended up in a world of hurt. Okay. Next one. This one we see all the time with people. Okay. No matter how many times I watch this, I feel so bad for Michael Bay here. So just pay attention, and we'll talk after. Okay, so this is more common than it looks. I mean, this is Michael Bay. He's really well trained. He's a talented person, but he stepped into an environment outside of his comfort zone. He's usually behind the camera. Now he's in front, and the teleprompter wasn't working. He had to wing it, and of course, he froze. That is a standard, typical limbic transfer symptom. And it literally just happened at the beginning at when we started this presentation. I was hoping that we'd be able to show the prank video. The bandwidth is terrible in this hotel, and it didn't work, so we had to adapt on the fly. And that is textbook of VUCA environments. Moving forward. So when you go back and take a look at all the symptoms of limbic transfer, we just touched on 4 of them. There's a lot more. We're going to cover them in the 20-episode series in depth, but I'm positive that you will connect with at least 80% of them. But the most important part is that when you experience limbic transfer, your performance, your positivity, even your physical and your mental health will decline and you will underperform. So that's why it's critical to bring tactics into your lives that will help reduce limbic transfer and ways to train to perform better under pressure. Now, the training part we're not going to cover in this introduction. We're just going to get into tactics, these 8 tactics in front of you, because they are things that you can introduce in your lives literally today. Okay, so that's where the value is. I want to provide some value because there is a lot of foundational elements to educate people on. And when it comes to the training, these are really difficult training scenarios that will take a lot of time to get you and your team competent in. So that's why we're not going to touch it today. That's going to come in the series. So I'm going to cover these real fast because we're under the gun for time. So try and keep up. And if you can't keep up, don't worry, you're going to get the recording afterwards. First one, path.
And good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to wait a second. It looks like Chad has just taken a moment to reconnect on audio. And again, I just would like to remind everyone that we will have a Q&A at the end of this presentation. So please use the dashboard to submit any questions that you have. And then we'll also be sending out a copy of the presenter slides to you all. And we'll have links to those videos that Chad has in the presentation. So just bear with us a moment, please. Chad, can you hear us?
Okay, looks like I'm reestablished.
Thank you.
Man, what a pain.
Technology
Yeah,
at its finest.
yeah, geez. Sorry about that, everybody. Swear a testing went well. Okay, let's jump right in, keep going. So, like I said, inspirational quotes and everything, there's always a point of failure. So I'm going to use this one as an example. And what we're going to talk about next is something that everybody can apply right away, and it can make a huge difference in your day. So every journey may start with a single step, but it's important to realize that a journey to nowhere also starts with a single step. So I like to talk about this refer to this as a positive effort. This is what most people do, most hard workers do throughout their day, and it has a real negative outcome. Epinephrine, every time you do anything that requires action, epinephrine is released in your brain, and it is what gets you moving. It's what makes you feel. It's what makes you feel that you've got neural energy. It improves your brain function. But the problem is if you're a person of grit and you're just going to push through a task and get through your day, the more effort you put in, the more epinephrine is released. And what happens over time is you get to a point of failure, you get excessive epinephrine in the body. And this is why people will end up getting headaches, your heart rate will increase, you'll sweat. And people do this on a daily basis. And it is what results in you getting frustrated and you want to quit. Now, if you got any mental health concerns, you suffer from depression, anxiety, bipolar, anything, this will exacerbate the symptoms and make it exponentially worse. And over time, this results in heart disease and stress-related illnesses. Just excessive epinephrine. And it happens when people focus on the end goal. And almost every company I know focuses heavily on project completion, on goals, growth. All of these outcomes remain central in many teams. And when you focus only on those outcomes, you create a scenario where your team suffers from excessive epinephrine. So what do we do about it? Thankfully, our brain has this wicked ability of releasing dopamine. Dopamine is what, a lot of people refer to it as the reward drug, but it's not about the reward. It's about the path to the reward. So back in the early days, cavemen, if they're hungry and they're walking on a path and they see some vegetation, they might get a little bit excited. They might be on the brink of death and starvation, but if they recognize something that will give a sense that they are getting closer to food, the brain releases dopamine, you get motivated, you get neural energy, and you continue. But dopamine also buffers epinephrine. So if you think about a speedometer or RPM monitor, or RPM reading, the needle, when it gets to the red line, that point of failure, if you focus on the path to outcomes, you focused on your effort towards the outcome, your brain releases dopamine and pushes that epinephrine back down. And you can get a lot of longevity, motivation, and the best part is if you just focus on milestones throughout the day, as you get closer to your outcome, you are buffering that epinephrine and you can reach the same goals in even more effective manner, but you're fully energized. You haven't suffered the symptoms of excess epinephrine at all. So how you do this is you change how you approach things. Instead of focusing on the outcomes, you focus heavily on creating milestones throughout the day, and you actually physically take the time to break and make sure that you're doing two things: reflecting on the progress and affirming navigation to make sure that you're on the right path. And there's a third thing that you could do. In each milestone, you could see what you've learned and how to make the next milestone better. We're going to get into more in this in the series, because there's a lot of tactics that you can do to make sure that you are getting the proper dopamine release throughout your day. But the most important thing is you can finish your day, go home, you feel better, you're not frustrated, and you're treating your family with the same level of respect that you treat others. A lot of people who focus on grit and the outcomes, they will go home frustrated at the end of the day. They've given customers all of the time and attention that they had in them, but when they go home at the end of the day, they're treating their family poorly because they've just reached their limit of patience and frustration. So it's important to recognize how the brain works with milestones and how to focus the effort on the path instead of the outcomes. Now, this next thing, bad news. Bad news is going to be absolutely more prevalent in the years to come. So as leaders, you're going to be delivering bad news more often. And this tactic of anchoring and headlining came from my police days, when we would have to do notifications and let families know that their loved ones had passed. So anchoring the mindset. What most people do when they have bad news is they have a nice conversation, or they give good news first, and they kind of fluff things up, and they build up into giving the bad news. And that's one of the worst things that you could do. You see it all the time. They'll come up and, hey, how you doing? Things going well, and they get through a little small chat, and then they try and build up for the difficult ask or delivering the bad news. If you apply the anchoring and headline mindset, you will have a much greater success. And all that is picture a police officer coming up, knocking on the door to deliver the bad news that they've lost a loved one. If I was to come up and say, hey, how you doing? I'm having a good day, and you kind of fluff things up a bit, it would be completely inappropriate. So proper way is to anchor the mindset first. You come up, this is going to be difficult to hear. I've got really bad news. This might ruin your day. Or I've got a really difficult ask. Give the person some time. Psychologically, they will set for the bad news. And then when you deliver the bad news, think about it as a headline. Instead of going on tangents, instead of coming up with excuses or reasons, you try and deliver it in 3 to 5 words, just like a headline. Now, if you stop there, you really could ruin the person's day. So it helps to prepare and have some sort of next steps or resources. Very simple tactic that makes a world of difference. Okay, backbriefs. Almost all problems in your team, even in your marriages, relationships, come back to poor communication. Backbriefs are amazing at fixing that. And all it is you adopt the mindset that I don't know what I said until you tell me what you heard. So in policing, we would be briefed before we'd go out on the road. And when you are given your tasks or your duties, you'd be briefed on a scenario or investigation. Part of your job is to give a back brief. Let your superiors know or your teammates know what you heard to make sure everybody's aligned. Very simple. You can implement it right away. And you just got to get into the habit of doing it nonstop. It'll make you a better listener. And of course, it will help eliminate most of the problems that occur due to poor communication. And speaking of communication, after action reviews, this is awesome. Now, a lot of companies will confuse after action reviews with reports, and they complicate them. At Plexxis, we make these no more than 5 to 10 minutes, and it's not a report. It is literally just a review, and we do it after every major action. It is critical. The fatal flaw in this is to not do it only when things go wrong. That's a post-mortem. When you do AARs, when things go wrong, they get associated with negative behaviors, and then people don't look forward to them. But when you make it about group and collective intelligence, they go really well, and people are excited to do them. And if you research this online, you'll see a whole crap ton of reports and methods around this. We recommend you do it in 3 simple questions. What was the goal? What did we learn? Or what could we done better? And the third one is the most important. Who else needs to know? Very simple. So there's always something that you can learn. You can do this after milestones as well to help with that dopamine release. And if you do that third step effectively, you literally create a team that continuously evolves. So critical, very simple, massive impact. Next one, 3W responses. This one's funny because it's so simple, but hardly anyone does it. And even on our own team, we're aware of this, and we still have people that don't do this. So it comes down to the fact that people cannot see your intent. They only see behavior. And what's happening in our current VUCA world is that the days are becoming more unpredictable. So the opportunity here is to become a predictable company. We had a massive problem with stability. We had a huge growth spurt several years ago, and we're still suffering because of it. But we're slowly getting over and it becoming more a stable team, and it's because of these tactics. So how do we do this? Who, what, when? All right, and that when is critical. Again, seems simple, right? Well, watch this. This is what most people do. Most people do the 2W response. If they don't have an answer or a resolution, they will just say things like, I'll get back to you shortly. Someone will update you soon. I'll look into this and get back to you. All you are doing with the 2W response is adding uncertainty to uncertainty. Soon, to me, might be different to you. So it does not help, it just makes things worse. But even worse than that is the 0W response, which is inaction. This is the worst thing you can do. And a lot of people do this because they don't have an answer, they don't have a response. But getting back and saying you don't have a response is better than inaction every time. So the 3W response is, even if you don't have a resolution or anything to provide, you just tell them, I will update you before Thursday at 4. And this also came from policing. When you take over an investigation for a victim, you never know if the investigation is going to be successful, and you certainly don't know a timeline. This is very similar to software, and it's certainly the case for construction. So when you're a police officer, you take over an investigation, you would always tell the victim, I'm going to get back to you tomorrow. I'm going to give you an update. You get back to them. I don't have any more information, but at least you get back. and then you give them another time. I still don't have any information, but at least you get back. You are adding more predictability to the relationship, and you are building trust in doing so. Now, if you never get a resolution, there's something wrong, and that should trigger another investigation. But the 3W response will improve the relationships, even within your own team. And I can attest this. We weren't doing this, a couple years ago, and the impact, the negative impact on customers, you feel it. You really do feel it. Well, once you switch to this, you can see the impact right away. Okay? Staying disciplined with the 3W response is important. A lot of people use task lists, and task lists can hurt you because there's no time element attached to it. So what we recommend is everything goes into your calendar. Replace a task list with your calendar because there's a time element attached to it, and you can see visually in a calendar when your time is being exhausted. And that's when you really start to stay more focused, because you know you don't have time, so it's easier to say no, and focus is about saying no. And then the second thing you do is type. So we call this TNT. Color coding task by type enables you to look at your calendar, and you can instantly see what areas are exhausting your time. That should trigger an investigation to go in and figure out what's going wrong so you can fix it. Again, all of this real simple to do, and it'll have a massive impact on your team. All right, positive proximity. Man, the world is going in a direction right now with remote work that we believe within the next 5 years is going to be tied directly to a massive increase in depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. Humans don't do well in isolation, and there's so much that comes from positive proximity, not toxic proximity, positive proximity. So because a lot of people are struggling right now, and we're in an industry where you got to be tough, just coming from, whether it's law enforcement, military, combat arts, construction, we got that tough guy mindset where, when you are struggling, you really do push it down. So when you ask people, hey, is anything wrong? You will typically get a no answer, even though there's something is wrong. So indirect health checks is a great way to see patterns that might trigger the proper conversation. It's really important to normalize conversations on your team around mental health, and this is one really good way to do it. All we do, or with my team, I will ask them occasionally, do you have control of your day? Is there anything at risk that we need to put more resources on? Raising the flag. We encourage raising the flag when you feel overwhelmed. Or I'll ask, hey, rank your focus between 1 and 5. What am I going to get out of you this week? And when you do this repetitively, you will start to see patterns where the person isn't necessarily in control. They may have something else going on in their lives that is distracting. If they're raising the flag a lot, it's not their fault. There's something else that's happening, and you should be happy that they're raising a flag. But when you get a pattern that there's a loss of control or overwhelm, that triggers the conversation to find out what else is going on. And when you do that enough and you establish enough trust with your team, the conversations around the real problems, there is a much higher chance of them being honest about what's happening in their lives. And now you start to normalize the conversations around mental health. It's easy to see when somebody's physically injured. It's not easy to see when somebody is struggling internally. So indirect questions will get around that privacy feeling where people really want to keep their internal struggles to themselves. Now, okay, I'm really hoping this video works now. And for the record, Ralph, I saw your text. Yeah, I'm traveling, I'm in a hotel. I swear, man, the bandwidth was working great. Anne Marie and I tested this out twice. So again, my apologies for everybody, but I think we're motoring now. Navigational leadership. This is based on the fact that inspiration and motivation is actually bad by itself. There are a lot of leaders out there that are learning from motivational speakers or inspirational content, or they read articles that feel great. And inspiration and motivation by itself creates hype, and that hype is normally not realized. But the most important thing a leader can do is provide inspiration, navigation and discipline. I'm going to show you some videos right now that are going to kind of spell things out and give you a formula to apply in both your home life and work life. Okay. Stand by for a second. This video here is Al Pacino in a movie which is known as, one of the most inspirational clips. Yeah, and it's a real popular clip. Okay, so yeah, I get it. It's inspirational. It feels great. But at the end of it, he literally said, "What are you going to do?" So I want to show you what real coaching is happening in professional sports. You're going to listen to a guy named Matt Arroyo. He's talking to one of his fighters in the corner, and then you'll hear me talking with my fighter in the corner, and just listen to what's said, and then we'll have a conversation afterwards. Okay. Obviously, a lot different than Al Pacino. All right. Now, what's different here is I really do believe that, hold on, I'm going to show you one more video first because it's going to make this conversation go a lot better. Okay. So here's the thing. You're probably wondering, yeah, Chad, I don't fight. How is this applicable? Everything that happened in that 1 minute, it kind of does relate to everything that we're talking about here. So I'm going to break them down in these 5 steps in a real efficient manner. Breathing and tonality. When you're in a situation, you're dealing with somebody, either you yourself is suffering from limbic transfer or the other person is. If it's you, breathing. You heard us say in the corner, getting the breathing under control, focusing on extended exhales. There's a physiological reaction with the space around the heart that signals the brain, and you can use breathing with extended exhales to lower your heart rate and get back into your cortex. So if you're suffering from any type of anxiety, depression, or anything that is, or excessive epinephrine, you can use breathing just as a simple tactic. In the series, we get into a lot of breathing tactics, but it is incredible because you can create or change your mindset right away. If somebody else that you are working with is experiencing a limbic transfer and you want to calm them down, your tonality, the calmness in your voice can have a massive impact, okay? Number 2, cortex confirmation. You heard Matt and I in the corner ask a math question. That's because the cortex is where math is done. You cannot do math when you're under limbic transfer. You can't do that effectively anyways. So if you don't confirm the person is in their cortex, it doesn't matter what you say, they're not going to retain it. It's like when you're in a fight with your spouse, same thing. You're not retaining, you're not having a logical conversation. So how you do this in your current environment or with teams is you ask about planning. What's your priorities? Okay, if they're ranting on about 10 things that are upsetting them, have them focus on the top priority. Just repeatedly ask, what's the number one thing that we can work on right now? When you do that, you're forcing them to use their cortex to plan and prioritize. Then you can start getting somewhere. 3, you're reflecting on the progress. The same thing that we spoke about and focusing on the path to outcomes and not the outcomes itself. You know, making sure that you're acknowledging the progress. Affirming navigation to make sure that you're going in the right direction. And of course, the after action. You use all the conversations that happen in those moments. You find what you can improve upon and you do it. So I like fighting and police examples because you have to be successful. Like, you have to be successful. If you're not using good tactics and you're not prepared, the consequences are immediate and drastic. So that's why I like those examples. And when you apply them in business, you get a lot further more effectively. They work amazing in the business environment, the corporate environment. Now, this next one is huge. Attention, our attention is under attack right now. You know, people are overwhelmed, under pressure in VUCA environments. They underperform because of limbic transfer. And then you throw on a $1 trillion artificial intelligence algorithm in social media. Man, the leaders will soon be defined by how well they can improve people's attention. So this next one, I mean, in the 20 episodes, I talk about attention in almost all of them. And we have over a dozen tactics that we use internally at Plexxis to start improving people's attention. So I think that those tactics are going to be the most embraced. I'm going to share one with you today, but it's just really important to know that controlling your attention and making sure that the people who deserve your attention most, your friends, your family, your teammates, and your customers, those 4, friends, family, teammates, and customers, they're the ones that deserve your attention. But what's happening now is our attention is being ripped and stolen by being overwhelmed, being distracted by the sheer nature of VUCA environments, and of course, you know, by social media. Before we get into the tactics, I'm going to share one more video. This video is an experiment called Still Face. Now, what's amazing is babies haven't learned to cover up how they feel yet. That's why they're really good in this experiment. When you stare at a baby and you use still face, you show no reaction, you show no emotion. Within 3 minutes, the baby will start to get agitated. The human brain is exceptional at receiving human signaling. So when you don't give that signaling back to the baby, within 3 minutes, they start to get extremely agitated, upset. So now what's really important here is that us adults, we just deal with it. We're feeling the same things that the babies are. And when we're on devices, we have still face. And the people that we are with experience that same frustration and distress. But we're just getting used to it, which is really shitty. So one thing that I always laugh at is when you go to restaurants and you see one person at the table pick up a phone. You can literally watch it happen before your eyes. You will see the other person look at a menu, move around a bit, get a little agitated, and then almost every time that person grabs their phone, and now you got two people completely disconnected on their phones. You can even try it with your own partner, just to see how long it takes them to grab something else and entertain themselves because you're not paying attention to them. So still face is real, and people are doing it in meetings. It even happens on Zoom, and people are doing it in their home lives with their own families. So what we do is the picture on the left is just a cigar box. I have that at home, and then we have other boxes at the office. The tactic is to humanize work life and home life. And when I say humanize, processes like onboarding, learning management systems, these are all digitizing critical processes on your team. People are being onboarded right now by automated HR software. It's ridiculous. And they're wondering why these people are feeling isolated and disconnected from their team. Companies will onboard learning management systems and have people go through a digitized learning process so they can start producing for the company right away, when the most valuable human interaction that you can get on a team is training together. So this box here, whenever we have a process that requires or will benefit immensely off of being humanized, we put the devices away in the box. I do it at home when I'm with my wife now. She was just, she got her to her wit's end with me with the phone, so this helped me immensely at home. Two, a lot of people will use devices in meetings to take notes. I highly recommend the Remarkable tablet, because handwriting, I mean, humans have been handwriting for millions of years, or there is a connection between the hand and the brain. Handwriting is better, but the most important part is when you're in a meeting and you are using a paper or a Remarkable tablet, people know that you're paying attention and they know what they're doing. When you're using devices, it changes everything. So try and humanize as many processes as possible. A lot of companies will shy away from this because, yes, this will slow you down. You will lose profitability in the short term. But the benefits that you get from deep human connection on your team, both in performance and your physical and mental health, the physical and mental health of your team, is immense. And there is a phenomenal study in this book called The Culture Code that showed that over a period of 10 years, humanizing processes and embracing that positive proximity mindset and tactics results in a 756% increase on average in net profitability. So that short-term vision of digitizing processes that humans would be better off in a connected and humanized manner, it's a short-term vision that may realize a greater level of efficiency and profit in the short term, but it really does hurt you in the long term. So outside of the 20 episodes that we're going to be releasing next year, I do recommend these two books and that you follow Dr. Andrew Huberman. Between these three resources, you will learn more than you ever needed to know about the brain-body relationship, the impact of stress on performance and physical and mental health and positivity. And the Culture Code will probably make you rethink how you're managing your team, especially with digitized processes. So there you go, everybody. Again, I really apologize for the technical difficulties. I really wish I wasn't in this hotel room, but that's the case. And hey, the complications and volatile uncertainty is actually quite fitting with today's presentation. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Chad. So in the questions, we have a comment and then a question. In the comment, Brad just wanted to share with you that in the movie, Any Given Sunday, that the team did win the game after the motivational speech. So he just wanted to share that quip with you.
Oh, I know, I'm well aware, yeah.
A question did come in from an individual. So if an individual practices the tool of Backbriefs, how does that person get their supervisor or boss to utilize the same tool so that they know that they're being, whether or not they're being listened to or just heard?
Yep, 100%. Really good question. So what we do is, so if I'm being briefed, I will take the action of saying, okay, I'm just going to tell you what I heard. Just make sure we're aligned. When it's a supervisor, you're briefing a supervisor. It's just a simple ask to say, okay, can you tell me how you interpreted that? That's it. You just ask them to repeat back. So I've also referred to this as repeat backs. There's other presentation out there. So just simply asking them to repeat back to make sure that you're aligned before you walk away. It's so simple. And if you just repeat it, usually it takes about 10 days of continuously asking it to create a habit. So after 10 days of consistent and repetitious action, it tends to be embraced by the people that are closest to you in your space.
Fabulous, thank you. And then I know we're getting close to that 2 o'clock time. So Chad, do you have any parting inspiration that you would like to share with the group today?
You know, it's the one thing that I can mention is this takes time. When we put the 20 episodes out, it'll probably seem overwhelming and some things will seem unrealistic. But just like eating an elephant, right? If you just take one tactic at a time and practice and make sure that it's habit, and if you do that over a course of 3 years, I say 3 years because that's how long it took us. You practice one habit at a time. 3 years, you can change the culture of your company, but most importantly, you will notice a difference in your own performance, positivity, and physical and mental health.
Very good. A lot of good takeaways. All right. Well, I don't see any other questions right now. So on behalf of AWCI, I would like to thank Chad Pearson and all of our attendees for joining us in today's webinar. A reminder that a recording and the handouts will be emailed to the attendees. So if anyone wants to share it with folks in your organization, or if someone missed it, we will get that out to you the next day or two. So thank you, everyone. Have a productive day, and we wish everyone the healthiest 2022 possible.
Thank you, everybody. Real pleasure, and we'll see you all next year. I can't wait to see everybody's faces again.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.